Hey, this is Dennis Consorte with Snackable Solutions, and I am here with Howard Stephen Berg, the world's fastest reader. Howard, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing awesome. How does somebody become the world's fastest reader? Tell me that story. Tell me what inspired you to read so much and so fast.
The short answer is I read faster than everyone else, but that's probably not the answer you're looking for. So I'll tell you my story. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, and there were a lot of gangs. It was West Side Story without the dancing and music. I met Bernardo. He had a knife. He wasn't smiling. There were no dance moves, and it was terrifying. I found the safest place in my neighborhood was the library. Gang kids will treat libraries like vampires treat churches. They don't go there. And the worst thing that could happen in the library is a paper cut. And I could handle that. So I read a lot, had college reading when I was 11. I went to the State University of New York, Binghamton, when I was 17 and majored in biology. And in the second half of my junior year, I get interested in the brain and how it works and learning. And there was a branch of biology called psychobiology, not psychotic biology, that's Frankenstein. Psychobiology is the biology of behavior. So when I told the dean, he looked at me and said, "You haven't had any courses in psychology. You only have 1 year left. You have to do the whole program, 4-year program in 1 year. And you haven't finished the bio program. And you need to take 6 science courses and 2 4-hour lab reports were on slide rules. It took 16 hours. So 40 hours of lab, 18 credits of science, and I had 3 jobs. I was working 18 hours a week." He said, "You're not smart enough." That's when I realized they never taught me how to learn in school. They tell you why and how, what will happen if you don't learn, but not why you hear a song once on the radio, you never forget it. You read the 7 habits of highly effective people, and the next day you don't know any habits. It has to be a way to learn things that matter, like the songs. So I got up to 80 pages a minute. I did the psych program in 1 year. I took the GRE, which is the SAT for graduate school. I took the bio GRE. I reviewed 48 books in 3 nights, like biochemistry, cell physiology, and genetics, which is not the lightest reading. And I got 3 questions wrong. I got an 800. I was in the 99th percentile. And then it was, gee, is it me or the system? If it's just me, then it doesn't really make any difference to anyone else. But if I could teach this, that's a really big life-changing thing for everyone. So I took kids 11 to 15. They were very young and taught them how to do it. And they did a 30-chapter book in lifelong developmental psychology, which is a sophomore course in college, in 1 week. And they took the AP test, the CLEP, and 15 out of 18 kids passed it in a week. So when you got an 11-year-old doing sophomore college courses in a week and getting full credit, you got something people need to know about that can change their life. And that's why I'm here today, to share what I discovered and share some of the secrets for learning and answer questions people might have on how they could get started.
That's great. And we're going to get into some of your tactics, how you actually do this stuff. But first, I want to know a little bit more. Tell me, was this something that came naturally to you, or was this something that you figured out how to do? And how old were you at that time?
I'm going to say yes to both sides. I had an unusual childhood. I lived across the street when I was much younger, 6 years old, from the Brooklyn Children's Museum. Back then, kids got out of the house at 6 by themselves. Today, you go to jail if your kid's wandering the streets. Back then, I gave tours of the museum to strangers, which is insane in today's world. But I would go up to total strangers and say, "Would you like me to show you around the museum?" And I showed them all the science exhibits. And I went there for 2 years. And I learned everything. I went to the planetarium so frequently. By the time I was 7, I was teaching astronomy because I kept going back to the same programs over and over, which is not your typical 7-year-old. And so I had an unusual life, and I read a lot because that was what I was able to safely do. And I got up to 3,000 words a minute before I learned to read fast. So I'd say that's unusual because most people read 200 words a minute. If you're reading 3,000, it's not typical. But then when I studied the brain and learned more about how the brain learns, it went to a whole nother level. See, most of these programs don't work. They teach you how to read fast, but that's not really what people want. They want to learn fast. I was with Dick Cavett on MSNBC about 25 years ago when it launched. And he told me how Woody Allen took Evelyn Woods and read War and Peace in 5 minutes. He said, "That's incredible, Woody. What do you remember?" And he said, "It's about the Russian Revolution. That's it." And that was speed reading. It's a science book. It's a math book. You didn't learn anything. And if you tried to learn something you didn't know and slowed down, you lost your speed. So people got very disappointed with the results. I changed how it's done. I used how the brain learns, not just mechanics. And so the man who owned Evelyn Woods in its heyday was Maurice Thompson Jr. He hired me to teach his son my system. He said, "You went past speed reading and speed learning, bringing it into the 21st century." So I took reading, comprehension, speed, study skills, how to comprehend things that are confusing. You read the calculus book, but can't solve a problem. You don't really know calculus. You just know formulas, but not what to do with them or how to apply them in a real life situation, which isn't adequate for doing well. How to stay in state, how to remember. When you combine all those skills, now you've got a Swiss Army knife for learning and not just speed reading. So that's what I did differently. And from what I was innately able to do, then taking what my teachers taught me and what I learned in graduate school about reading in the brain and how the brain makes sense of text. And I took all that information and put it in one place. And then I was able to get kids as young as 11 to read 100% faster. I had an 84-year-old read 3 books in 3 hours the day after I taught her. So that's why it works so well, because it's a combination of what science has discovered and what I was able to do innately.
That's amazing. Now, before we get into the tactics, I have one more question, and that is, you actually held a Guinness Book of World Records record in this. Tell me about that and how they were able to measure your reading speed.
It's still there. I'm the only person they ever did speed reading. It was in 1990. The book requires you to justify your claim. Most of the claims in the book are based on a single newspaper report or a single TV news report. That's the normal criterion. I had 10. I had 5 different reporters in 5 different cities test me, and 5 different news stations in 5 other cities test me on video. So I had 5 videos and 5 newspaper articles from totally different cities. They said the likelihood of 10 reporters colluding with me to make me look good was very low. They said you might have one that might be your friend or your cousin, but the rest, no. So they said you had more support for your claim than almost any record they've done. So that's why they were able to validate it, and no one's ever been able to replace it.
Got it. That's very fascinating stuff. Now, I'll be honest, I am a very slow reader. I was in a lot of honors classes as a kid because I understood stuff, but it took a lot of work. I would have to read things 2-3 times just in order to comprehend it. And a piece of what you mentioned resonated with me. You mentioned this before the interview. You said that emotional intelligence comes into play. I am naturally very low in that. I'm one of those logical people who just sees things as processes. This is how you do stuff, and that's how I remember. I'm terrible at rote memorization. And now what you said to me makes me think maybe it has to do with the fact that up until now, I was very low in emotional intelligence. I actually take a lot of training in that. Tell me how that fits into being able to read and comprehend at a very fast pace.
I could not only tell you, but show you how to create it, if that would be a better answer.
Let's do it.
Yes, emotional intelligence is critical. When I taught the U.S. Special Forces at Fort Bragg in the Royal Thai Army in Bangkok, one of the key things I taught was emotional intelligence. They're very well trained, but if they're awake for 4 days and don't remember what they learned, they could get killed. So I'll show you how to create a state. EQ is critical. Like many students will study and get nervous and can't pass a test because they get too anxious, or people who are knowledgeable but find themselves tongue-tied speaking in public. They said more people are afraid of public speaking than death, which means you would rather be in the coffin than doing the eulogy. The way to create emotional intelligence comes from psychobiology. So I'll show you how to create a state. What I taught the young men in the military is how to wake up when they're exhausted. And we often have that challenge in our lives. Maybe you went to work and you have to take a class at night for certification or to keep your license active, like a doctor or a lawyer, an architect. They have to constantly keep their skill set high and take exams to prove that they're taking courses to do that. Maybe you went to a long, boring meeting and you had to stay alert. You couldn't leave the room. So here's a good way to quickly become attentive and alert. Now we know the left side of the brain controls the right, the right, the left. Do this with me. Take your left hand, touch your right shoulder. Take your right hand, touch your left. And as you're doing it alternately, it's actually a brain massage, as well as the Macarena without the music, but you're using one side of your brain and the other. Now, ideally, we should be standing, but there are microphones. If we stand up, no one will hear us, or you might have sweatpants on that you don't want anyone to see. So we're going to pretend we're standing, but later do it standing, and those watching do this too. Anyway, right now we'll do it seated. Take your left hand, touch your right knee, and your right hand, touch your left knee, alternating. When you're standing, the knee moves. So both sides of your brain are active. You actually have to think a little bit because everything's going on at the same time. Now grab your thumb in your hand like I am and say this like you mean it with conviction. I feel great. Yes.
I'm not good at vocal variety. I'll leave it like that.
That's EQ. That's how you fix it. When you say that, you affirm it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling. You just need to be saying is, I'm going to change this and become better at it. When you say it's a weakness, you're reaffirming the weakness, and that's part of the problem with EQ. EQ is about focusing on what you want, not on where you are, or else you just stay where you are forever and never self-improve. So it's important to say, I feel great, yes, with enthusiasm. Go, I feel great. That's how you're going to feel later. And that's not a feeling you really want. So we're going to do 3 sets of these at my speed. Everyone watching, do it with us. You don't learn by watching, you learn by doing. Starting with shoulder taps. Ready? 1.
Okay, hang on. I feel like I should change the view here.
Okay.
Okay, let's try that. And I'll try to play along as best as I can.
Ready?
My wife's in the other room, so she's going to think I'm nuts if I start screaming.
That's okay. My wife thinks I'm nuts too. She might be right. I don't know. Are you ready?
Could be.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How do you feel? I feel great. Yes.
Feel great. Yes.
Like I mean it. This time a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How do you feel? I feel great. Yes. This time as fast as you can go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How do you feel? I feel great.
Feel
yes.
Great. Yes.
Feel great. Smile. You know what happens when you do it 3 times? Nothing. Now you probably would like something. Let me show you that works. Remember Pavlov? Rang a bell, fed a dog. Rang a bell, fed a dog. Rang a bell, the dog drooled. You don't want to drool. You do want to feel great. The latest studies show habits take 90 days, not 30 days. So every day you do this for 90 days. Now you're in an important meeting. You need a burst of energy. Don't start tapping your shoulders. They'll throw you out of the room or call an ambulance thinking your wife was right. you've lost your mind. No, you grab your thumb and say, I feel great. Yes, that's your bell.
That's your anchor.
And here's a
Yeah.
little tip on EQ in marriage. When your wife says something, just agree, just say yes. Unless it's really, really important. The secret to a happy marriage is just say yes, because you wish you had later if you hadn't. I've learned that over the years. Most of the time, it isn't worth fighting over. Most of the time, and I personally found my wife is more emotionally intelligent than me. So I usually listen. If I really believe she's wrong and it's detrimental, what she's saying, I'll stand my ground and say I don't agree and give a reason, give a logical reason to back it up. But rarely do I do that because she's usually right. And it's not that important to me. Most things in life don't matter that much. There's things that she said, I want to move to rural Alaska and live in a cave. No, I probably would say I don't really like that idea. I'm not moving to rural Alaska and living in a cave. I would put my foot down on that one. But she said, let's move to Florida from Texas because she wanted to get close to her daughter. It's not exactly a hellhole to live in middle of Florida. So I said, yeah, I can live with that. I didn't really want to move. I liked where I was, but she wanted to, and it was important to her. I said, okay, well, I'll just do that and make her happy. She makes me happy. That's EQ. EQ is not just what's in it for me, but how can I make your life better too? Consideration, that's EQ.
And I feel like a
Compassion,
big part of that is listening skills.
yes. And realizing some things aren't worth arguing over. If it means that much to someone you love, then just do it because you love them. That's enough reason. You don't need more reason than that. It's not like you're cutting your legs off to make them happy. You're doing something that'll make them feel more happy in their life. And you'll find that they'll pay it back. They'll appreciate that you were compassionate when they needed it. And when you need it, and we all do sometimes. We all have bad days. We all have crises in our lives. And that's when you rely on someone like that to be there. And they will, because you were there. Now, my first marriage was a storybook marriage. Unfortunately, Stephen King wrote the book, so those rules didn't apply. But I have a really good one now. So
That's always good. So,
yeah.
so if I understand right, a big part of being able to read fast and comprehend material is to first get into a high emotional state and then to
Yes.
get into the reading. So
When I was on TV, when I read the healthcare bill in 50 minutes, it was 1,500 pages. You gotta be really focused. I can't hear anything but the book. And so I meditated for 90 minutes before I went on the show to be extremely focused. The only thing I responded to was my name. He says, Howard, then I have to answer the question. But other than that, I have no idea what was going on the show, because I was focusing on 1,500 pages of very dense legalese medical material. And you can't do that and juggle 4 conversations at the same time effectively. So EQ is the first step. If you'd like, I could show you to read faster and comprehend better also.
sure, let's do it.
When this is over, pick a book you've read, preferably nonfiction. So the only thing that might confuse you is your speed, not the book, since you're familiar with it. And get a timer, read for a minute the way you normally do. Nothing special. Just see how far you go normal. And when you're finished, take a pen or a pencil, put a little mark in the margin of the book showing how far you went in the first chapter. Now you've measured what you can do in a minute. Now the magic. Go to the second chapter. Get your hand and go across one line at a time with your eye following your hand. And this is the key. As fast as you can comprehend. As long as you know what you're reading, go quicker and quicker and quicker till you don't. The only reason you wouldn't know what you're reading in a familiar book is you're going too fast. That's how you know you're going too fast. You slow down just enough so the comprehension returns. And for 5 minutes, as fast and no slower as you can comprehend, go one line at a time. Now, go back to the first chapter where you tested yourself for a minute and time yourself for a minute using your hand as fast as you could comprehend. And you're going to go 20 to 40% further with that one change. But that's only the first step. Now I'll show you to comprehend, which is far more important. I'd rather have you go 100% quicker with really great comprehension and 5 times faster and no, it was about the Russian Revolution and that's all you remember. One of the key elements in comprehension is called schema. And rather than tell you what it is, I'll demonstrate how it affects comprehension. I'm going to read a passage without any schema, with very simple language, and you won't have any idea what I'm talking about. I'll read it a second time with a title, one word that has schema, and instantly it all makes sense. Are you ready? This is the schemaless text. This is an easy thing to do. If possible, you could do it at home, but you could always go someplace else if it's necessary. Beware of overdoing it. This is a major mistake and may cost you quite a bit of money. Makes no sense. I'm going to read it again with a title, one word, and instantly everything makes sense. Laundry. Laundry. This is an easy thing to do. If possible, you could do it at home, but you could always go someplace else if it's necessary. Beware of overdoing it. This is a major mistake and may cost you quite a bit of money. There's no confusion. I'm teaching people where these clues are, how to spot them. They're the decoder ring. They make the words make sense on a page, even in very technical material. So when you know what to look for and how to find it 2, 3, 4 times faster, you're actually getting as good or better comprehension at the higher speed than the slower speed. And that's a big breakthrough in speed reading. It also makes it possible to slow down, learn new words, new ideas you didn't know, and then go right back to reading quickly again, where in the old system was all those hand movements and it was mechanical. If you slowed down for any reason and ultimately you had to learn something you didn't know, your speed disappeared because it was a conditioned response and you broke the conditioning by slowing down. So I eliminated that problem. 1, you can't slow down, which means you don't learn anything. And 2, how do you maximize comprehension instead of speed? I was more interested with 6 science courses in learning than reading fast. It turned out I could do both at the same time as these kids did, and so can you.
Now, do these techniques also apply to things outside of this scope? And I'll give you an example. You mentioned being able to learn different subjects. What about something like a different language? Do these techniques apply to that? Tell me about that.
Yes, I teach people how to speed learn languages, how to speed. Well, actually, there's only 5 things you need to learn. Do you know what they are? You ever be in a book? You said, what do I learn? It just, the book has so much information. Where do I start to learn? Can I show you how to start and organize it and then what to learn? If that helps?
Yes. Yes, let's do it.
So most people take notes on what they're learning. I think we could agree that's what you take your notes on. That's only 1/3 of the information you actually should be taking notes on. You should have a 3-column table set up in your word processor. The first column is what you normally would take notes on, what you're learning, and that's great. The second column is any insights, any added information, embellishment. And here's something that's very important. The meta program. What did the writer or the speaker, if you're taking notes in a live program, what did the speaker do that got you interested? Did they tell a story? Did they have a joke? Did they show a movie? What voice pattern did they use? What inflections were they using? What physical body language did they use? Whatever they did that got your attention, that made you go, wow, that's amazing. You could do that when you're speaking. You can do that when you're writing. You can use the meta program, what they're doing, to make it interesting to others when you want to be interesting. Now, the third column is critical. How will you use what you just learned? So imagine I'm at a learning marketing seminar with Dan Kennedy, who's a friend of mine. You both used to lecture with Zig Ziglar. And in the third column, I just learned a new marketing strategy and saying, wow, I could double my sales if I use what he just said. And I'm writing in the third column how I will double my sales using what he taught me. Specifically, what I'm going to do with that information. When I go home, I look at that third column and look at all the things I want to do, and I do them. Some days I'll do one, some days I'll do two or three, but I do them. And it's the action of doing it that makes it meaningful and sticks. If I see my income double using a new strategy, do you think I'm going to remember the strategy that doubled my income? Or do I have to study it over and over again? When you see those kind of results from an action, your brain lights up. It doesn't ever want to forget it. And so those are the three things you need to do to learn. Now, what do you need to learn are 5 things. New words, vocabulary, 80% of a new subject is the vocabulary. Names, who's in the book, what did they do? Numbers, dates, formulas, and statistics. What are they and how do you use them? The 5 takeaways in every heading and subheading section, the big points they're making, the 5 main ideas or points, and the questions and answers. Here's a big takeaway. Most textbooks have questions at the end. So you read 40 to 60 pages, you get 20 to 30 questions, you don't know any answers, you have to read it again. Read the questions first. That's the writer saying, this is what I want you to know when you're done with these 60 pages. You don't know what to learn. They wrote the book. I'm going to assume that these are the 30 or 40 things they want you to know. You should know what they are before you read. And now when you see one of them, you say, wait, that's one of the things they said I should learn. I'm going to focus on it more intently. Now, in the table that I told you, in the first column, you put the word, in the second column, the definition. In the first column, you put a name. In the second column, what they did. In the first column, you put number, date, statistical formula. Second column, the significance or how to use the formula. The first column is a trigger word like Revolutionary War, general. The second column would be the concept George Washington. The first column is the question. The second column is the answer. And if you do this, you'll find it very easy to rapidly find exactly what you need to learn and put it in a place where you never need to read the book again. All you really need is the table. The table contains all the data you actually need to take away from the book without all the fluff, all the prepositions and the conjunctions and adverbs and adjectives. This is the data you actually need to know to master the subject. And that will make learning much easier. We go into much more detail in the full program at berglearning.com, step by step, and also how to study and remember it. So you don't just get tons of data and then go, my head's going to explode. You actually have to go step by step by step to learn how to absorb it, retain it, and even more importantly, recall it when you need to use it. That's what really matters in learning. Being able to use the information when you need it, not say, I once learned this, I don't remember it anymore. It's useless when that happens. It happens a lot. I know I learned this once, but I don't remember it now. No, you have to know it when you need it. And that's where memory skills come in, which we could cover next.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great framework for summarizing content, much better than just randomly highlighting and taking notes.
Oh, no. Plus, I just made a new program. It's a bonus program on how to use an e-reader. More and more people are switching from physical books to Kindles and iPads, use the Kindle app, laptops, telephones. People are reading on telephones. So I made an entire program, which is a free giveaway with my regular program on how to learn on these new age devices that everyone's using. No one's done that. You have to adapt to what people are doing. I think there'll always be books. There's still records, even though it's not as popular as it was in its heyday. People still buy records and record players, not everyone, but books have an advantage over e-readers. Studies show Material read in a physical book is better learned and retained than in an e-reader. E-readers have other advantages. It's less expensive. You can carry it wherever you go. It's convenient. Dozens or hundreds of books in your pocket on an e-reader, which is impossible with a physical book. So there's some pros and cons. I don't believe books will ever completely disappear, but from a publisher's side, there's lower risk in an ebook. They don't have to have tons of paper and print and store it in a warehouse and hope maybe someone will buy this and make a profit. All they have is electrons. They either buy it or they don't buy it. They don't really lose on the publishing costs if no one buys it. It's very practical from a business side, and they pass that savings on to the reader, where ebooks are typically, not always, but typically far less expensive than their physical counterparts. So everyone wins financially, practically, in terms of having more opportunities to read. But the downside is you still learn better in a physical book. No matter how much opportunities the ebooks are giving, you will learn better in a text that's physical.
That all sounds great. And we're almost out of time. So maybe we'll have to have you back again to talk about the memory
That'll be
concept.
fine.
In the
Like that.
meantime, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. This was very educational for me. Now, if you could, in the next few minutes, can you talk about what your snackable solution is and then the steps to achieve it?
Most people I meet today often are struggling, particularly with the virus. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of anxiety, depression. It's really high in the world, not just here. And one of the problems people have is they try to stop being depressed, stop being anxious. It doesn't work. The unconscious brain does not understand negatives. I can control your mind right now, and I'm going to do it with you knowing I'm doing it. You can't stop me. Don't think of Mickey Mouse eating pizza. And that's the first thing that you think. When you say the word don't be nervous. Your brain hears be nervous. Don't be depressed. Your brain hears be depressed. That's how the brain is wired. So how do you get rid of it if you can't negate it? The brain is not good at negation. It's good at construction. Don't focus on your state of depression or anxiety. Focus on how blissful and calm you are, even when you're not. See, anxiety and depression don't exist. This space is not depressed. There's no depression. It's in here. You're creating it on your thoughts. When you think about it, it gives it life. It vivifies it. You fertilize it. How you kill it is to focus on the opposite, the blissful state, the calm state. Even when it isn't there, you're creating it. You created the depression. You created the anxiety by thinking about it. You're just doing what you just did in reverse. Don't try to undo it. Create the opposite. What happens is over time, your habit switches to the positive, and it gets stronger and stronger. The less you focus on the negative state, it atrophies. It never existed to begin with. It only existed because you focused on it and became conscious of it. As you're ignoring it and you're building on what you actually want in your life, that grows like a flower that's been fertilized, and the negative state is like a weed that's been deprived of nutrition. And over time, it's not like one day and now you're blissful. You've built these bad patterns up over time. There are neural pathways that are firing that you created a reinforcement to. With time, these new pathways become stronger and overwhelm the negative pathway till it totally atrophies and it becomes non-existent. And if you focus on the state you want to create, the pattern you want to live with, the old state and pattern will go away and you'll be in a much better place. And I just wanted to mention my programs are at berglearning.com, berglearning.com. And we help you if you need help. And I help when they can't help. I'm a Rotary president. You can see my banner. We make sure that you learn what you paid for. We help kids get higher grades so they don't live with you till they're 40 because they never finished school or couldn't get a good enough job to pay their loans off. We help businesses make more money because everything they do is based on what they know, and every decision is based on information. You can learn more. Imagine read a book a day, every day, and an hour for a year, 365 new skills. What would it do to your business? And we help seniors. I'm 72. We help seniors stay mentally fit. No one's accusing me of being mentally feeble because I use my head. I use it. I'm learning. I'm writing. I'm creating. I'm keeping myself occupied. And as long as you use that brain, it grows. When you sit and drool in front of a TV, that's where your brain's going to become drool. So that's what we teach, how to read faster and learn, how to eliminate writer's block. I wrote a book in 5 hours in one day, and the next day it went #1 on Amazon. We teach how to overcome writer's block, memory, and speed math. So these are great. And we have for professionals, for students, and for kids. So please check it out, berglearning.com. It'll change your life. The world's in trouble. We need people who can think. People will understand. Don't be influenced by what other people tell you to think and believe. You need to be smart enough to think for yourself. And that comes from learning and learning more than one perspective and analyzing and seeing where the truth is. It's like Jesus said, the truth sets you free. And if you don't have truth, you're living a lie. So my goal is to empower people to go to the next level, become successful, make more money, have a better life, and ultimately we make a better world with smarter people making better decisions than the ones we're seeing now. Hopefully you'll go to my website, berglearning.com, and I'll help you. I can't go there for you, but I will help you if you take that step. That's really why I'm here today, to help make a better world. That's my goal.
Howard Stephen Berg, B-E-R-G, at berglearning.com. It was amazing to have you here, and we'll definitely have to have you back. Thank you so much, Howard.
We'll do more. I'll show you how to write a book in a day. I'll show you how to memorize, how to be a genius. You can learn it. It's a way to learn to be a genius. It's a learnable skill.
That sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Well,
Cool.
fun.
So let me
Thank you,
stop.
everyone.